I was locked up, not when I was 13 and acting out, but at 21 just because I refused to hand over my $150,000 scholarship to my brother, the same brother who had just gone bankrupt after committing financial fraud. And the worst part, my dad screamed in my face that if I ever told Grandma, I'd lose everything. Sounds insane? I thought so too. Until I found myself shoving documents into my backpack at 4 a.m., unlocking the front door of the house I grew up in for over 2 decades, and running away. My name is Ryan Carter. I'm 21 from Dallas, Texas, born into a family where love always came with conditions, so long as I wasn't the one being compared. On the surface, we looked picture perfect. A big house, weekend parties, 2 sons. But inside those walls, only one of us got treated like royalty, my brother Derek. And me, I was the backup plan. The younger son who wore hand-me-downs got told to be realistic anytime I dreamed too big, and was always seen as an investment that hadn't paid off yet. The truth is, if it weren't for my grandma, the only person who ever truly saw me, gifting me $150,000 on my 21st birthday, I would have stayed in that background role forever. But just one day after I got the money, my parents walked into the kitchen with those fake smiles and said, "Ryan, you know, family helps family, and Derek really needs it right now." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because for the first time, I realized, in their eyes, I was never part of this family. I was just a resource, held in reserve for the child they actually loved. Ever since I was a kid, I knew some people are born to be cherished, and others are born to stand beside them as the backdrop. Derek was the first kind. Me, obviously the second. We were only 3 years apart, but the distance our parents created between us, it felt like a canyon. Derek was the heir, the center of every dinner, every conversation, every future plan. Dad always called him things like, "my special boy," or "the pride of this family." And me? "Ryan, clear the table." "Ryan, what's with your English grade?" "Ryan, don't compare yourself to your brother. He's naturally better than you." For a long time, I thought maybe I just wasn't good enough. In 7th grade, I got selected for the state debate team. It was the first time I ever won something. I printed out the certificate, taped it to my bedroom door, hoping Mom would notice. She glanced at it and said, "Does this come with any prize money?" That was the first time I took something down before it even had time to fade. Derek was different. No matter what he did, win or lose, screw up or succeed, our parents always found a way to praise him. When he was in 11th grade, he got kicked off the football team for punching the coach. My dad, he went to the school and had a talk. Next thing you know, the coach was replaced. I'm not kidding. Derek wasn't just the center of the family. He was the family. And me, I lived in the shadows, started working part-time jobs in 10th grade, saved up to buy used textbooks. I kept quiet about every compliment from a teacher, every scholarship interview invite, even when I got picked to lead a district-wide project. Not because I was humble, but because I knew the only reaction I'd get was a smirk and a snide. "Oh, Ryan actually did something?" The worst part was when relatives visited. My mom would drag everyone into the living room to show off Derek's report card taped to the wall, bragging about even his tiniest wins. Mine, tucked in a kitchen drawer, buried under water bills. One time, my aunt asked, "Where does Ryan go to school?" My mom casually replied, "Oh, he's at community college. You know, just enough." Just enough. Those 2 words branded my entire childhood. Like I didn't need to dream big, didn't need to stand out, just stay quiet and don't cause trouble. I'd study every night under a desk lamp while Derek's laughter echoed from the next room. streaming games, cracking open beers with his friends, being cheered on like it was some legitimate career path. I remember once when I was 17, I asked Mom, if I try really hard, could I maybe get into a better college? She shrugged. Community college is fine. Don't get your hopes up. We're not exactly rolling in money. A week later, Derek got a $6,000 motorcycle, a reward, they said, for starting his own business. That's when it hit me. To them, spending money on Derek was an investment. Spending it on me, that was just an unnecessary expense. I still remember the exact moment I realized my college dream had been sold out without a single word of warning. When I was little, my grandma Eleanor opened a joint savings account for me and Derek. She told us, this money is for your future education. Every birthday, every holiday, no toys, no gadgets, just small deposits, $200, $300, sometimes $500, depending on what she could manage. No one was allowed to touch it unless it was for school. I used to think, at least Grandma sees me. At least one person believed I deserved a future too. I never laid a finger on that account. All through high school, I worked part-time at a bookstore, washed cars on weekends, even tutored math for one of Dad's coworkers' kids, just to save up for SAT fees and a few AP courses. I knew we weren't wealthy, and I never asked for anything. Then came that night, June of my senior year. I got home from work and found Derek at the kitchen table, typing away on his laptop, going on and on about the first VR gaming startup founded by young Texans. My parents sat across from him, eyes lit up like they were watching Steve Jobs pitch the iPhone. Mom turned to me and said with a smile, "My brilliant son, he's gonna be his own boss before he's even 20. Who needs college, right?" I thought it was just empty talk. Until a week later, I got a letter from the bank. Joint education account. Available balance. I brought the letter to my parents, shaking. All I got in return was a frustrated sigh. "Ryan, that money wasn't just for you. It was a shared account, and Derek needed seed funding for his company." I went numb, not because I was shocked, but because they said it like it made perfect sense. You've got your community college scholarship. For your level, that's more than enough. And Derek, he didn't apply for college, didn't take the SAT, didn't have stellar grades, but he said he had vision, and that was enough for them to pour money into him. 6 months later, his startup collapsed. "Turns out there's no real market," he said, but my parents still defended him. "At least he had the guts to try," they told me. "Ryan, you should learn to take risks like that." But I didn't need to take wild risks. I just wanted to study the right way, at the right place. And now that dream, it had been handed off to someone who never even valued it. That was the first time I felt truly betrayed. Not by a stranger, but by the very people who were supposed to protect me. And from that day forward, I stopped believing in the word shared when it came to my family, because what kind of shared takes everything from the quiet one, just to give it all to the one who already broke it. After that gut punch, I started living like a shadow in my own home. No more sitting at the dinner table, no more asking for help with tuition, no more looking for approval from my parents. I just went to class, went to work, came home, closed the door, studied, rinse and repeat, like an emotionless machine on autopilot. But thankfully, not everyone in my life saw me as just the backup plan. The first was Grandma Eleanor, my dad's mother. She lived in Wellesley, Massachusetts, in this old storybook-looking neighborhood with towering oak trees and a white wooden house that looked like something straight out of a Hallmark movie. She hated cell phones, hated social media even more, but every month, without fail, she sent me a handwritten letter just for me. Cream-colored envelopes, paper that smelled faintly of vanilla, perfect cursive, carefully written. One day, she wrote, "You'll understand that silence can be stronger than words." Or, "Remember, Ryan, you don't have to scream to be seen. Just stand where you belong, and the light will find you." I kept every one of those letters in an old wooden box under my bed, and whenever I felt like the world was swallowing me whole, I'd pull them out and read like little reminders that I did matter, that someone did believe in me. The second was Luis, my one real friend since high school. He lived with his mom, Ms. Maribel, a Mexican-American nurse, in a tiny apartment that always smelled like chicken soup and felt warmer than anywhere else on earth. One time I stopped by their place during a downpour. I was drenched, my shoes were caked in mud, and I only came to borrow an umbrella. But Ms. Maribel pulled me inside, handed me a towel, and had a massive pot of soup going in minutes. She said, "Anyone who walks through that door is family. Nobody leaves here hungry." I broke down crying right there in her kitchen, not because I was hungry, but because, for the first time in years, someone invited me to stay. No expectations, no conditions, just because I was me. After that, I became her second son. She scolded both of us if we got bad grades in math. Luis always saved me a plate of dinner, even if I didn't say I was coming. In that little home, I could breathe, I could talk, I could be Ryan, without disappointment trailing behind my name. And Grandma Eleanor, she didn't just write letters. She called me every year on my birthday, sharp at 6 a.m. "Happy birthday, Ryan," she'd say. "I heard you got an A in microeconomics. I'm proud of you. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." No comparisons, no if-onlys, no but Derek, just Ryan. And in the broken pieces of my family, there were 3 people who truly saw me, not as someone extra, not as a backup, but as a whole person, worthy, capable, and allowed to dream big. I've never really believed in signs, but that morning, when I opened the mailbox and saw a cream-colored envelope with the seal of St. Augustine Business School, my heart started pounding so fast I thought I was about to pass out. I had applied on a whim, just tossing a Hail Mary into the cloudy sky of self-doubt and insecurity. That school, it was the dream I dared to hope for, but never truly believed I could have. And yet, I got in. Not just an acceptance letter, but a partial scholarship package with one small line at the bottom. Applicant will be considered for the Distinguished Student Support Grant if able to fund remaining tuition. Remaining tuition? Roughly $37,000 per year. An impossible amount for a part-time librarian and community college student like me. But then I remembered Grandma Eleanor, and the money she once said was for when the time comes. I sat frozen for nearly an hour. Sometimes hope doesn't show up like light. It crashes in like a thunderstorm during a drought, soaking you in confusion more than clarity. A few days later, while I was still debating whether to call Grandma or not, my parents suddenly announced, "Ryan, you're turning 21 soon. We want to do something special for you." I nearly choked. For the past 20 years, my birthdays had been a rushed supermarket cake, half-melted candles, and awkward mumbled wishes. One year, I didn't even get that. Just a reminder, money's tight this month. We've got the electric bill coming. And now, they want to do something special. "We're throwing a party," Mom said, "inviting relatives, friends, the whole family. There'll be catering, music, a cake. You deserve it." I sat there in silence, but in my head, alarm bells were already ringing. They've never done anything just for me. And if you're from Texas, you'd understand. Nothing in Dallas comes without emotional strings attached. Every compliment, every act of love comes with a price. My suspicions were confirmed when I got a text from Zoe, my cousin, and the unofficial family news anchor. Big B-Day bash for the prince coming up. Mom said your mom just called asking for Grandma Eleanor's favorite cake recipe. Guess who they're trying to lure back to Texas? The second I read that, I knew. That party wasn't about me. It was a performance. And I, Ryan Carter, was being pushed onto the stage, not to be celebrated, but to serve as the backdrop for the perfect family fantasy they needed Grandma Eleanor to believe. What they didn't know was that this time the play wasn't going to last long, because I wasn't the supporting character anymore. I was ready to rewrite the script. 2 days before the party, I woke up in the middle of the night, thirsty. As I headed downstairs for a glass of water, I heard whispering coming from the kitchen, my mom and dad's voices. I almost turned around, but something made me stop. I stood frozen in the dark, back pressed against the wall, heart pounding, as I heard my dad say, "Martha, are you sure Eleanor's coming? Everything has to be perfect. If she catches even a hint of something off, this whole thing falls apart." "I've got it all ready," Mom replied. The cake, the photo album, even a slideshow about Ryan. "We'll show her we're being fair to both sons." Dad let out a low, calculating chuckle. "She's still wiring $25,000 a year into the Family Assistance Fund. If she starts questioning things, that money's gone. Derek won't survive another month." Then Mom, in a voice soft but sharp as a blade, "Ryan has no clue. He really thinks this party is about him. He's so much easier to handle than Derek." I stood there, numb. It was all a lie. The party, the sudden kindness, the compliments, all just makeup on a performance called We're Good Parents. And me? I was just a prop. A living exhibit to convince Grandma Eleanor that they didn't play favorites, that they took care of both their sons. A human cover story. To squeeze out more money for Derek. The same Derek who had already burned through his first round of funding and was on the verge of crashing again. I felt sick. I turned to head back upstairs, but my foot caught the edge of the rug. A small sound, barely a whisper, but it was enough. The kitchen went silent. My heart raced as I walked quickly back upstairs, pretending I'd just come from the bathroom, still holding the glass of water. But as I passed Derek's room, I froze. His door was slightly ajar. He was on the phone. I didn't catch everything. Just one sentence. "Relax. I'll get the papers after the party. The kid doesn't know how to lock his drawer. I've been copying his signature since middle school." I clenched my fists, every part of me wanting to burst through that door. But I didn't, because now I knew. They weren't going to ask anymore. They had moved on to Plan B. Steal. I couldn't stay. Couldn't keep playing the smiling, obedient son while they paraded me around like a showpiece. And I definitely couldn't let them touch the future my grandmother had spent her whole life trying to protect for me. It was 2:18 a.m. By 5 o'clock, I would be gone, like I never existed. I didn't need the alarm. When the clock hit 4:45 a.m., my eyes had already been open for hours, not from excitement, but because I hadn't slept a single minute. My mind was a battlefield, cluttered, hyper-aware, cold. There was no room left for uncertainty, only the plan. I sat up in the dark without turning on the lights. Every move had already been rehearsed. I threw on my old hoodie from high school, packed a few sets of clothes into my backpack, slid in my laptop, student ID, passport, and most importantly, the folder with every single document tied to Grandma Eleanor's scholarship fund. I checked it 3 times. Every page was a shield between me and the trap they'd set. I opened my bedroom door without a sound. The lock was old, but I practiced unlocking it with a plastic ID card the night before, a mental drill for escape. When the latch clicked softly, I held my breath. No noise from downstairs, no footsteps, no eyes watching. I stepped into the hallway, avoiding the third floorboard, the one that had creaked since I was 5. Down the stairs, through the living room, into the kitchen. I grabbed a few protein bars and a bottle of water, not because I was hungry, but because I knew the road ahead would be long, and once I left, I wasn't turning back. I slipped out the back door. The house behind me was still, silent, like it had never been the emotional battleground I'd lived in for 21 years. As the door clicked shut behind me, I looked up at the sky, still pitch black. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just walked, like I was leaving behind a hollow shell I'd once called home. 2 miles to the bus station. With every step, I felt another layer of pressure fall off my shoulders. I passed familiar streetlights, lights, closed coffee shops, sleeping houses, but this time, I didn't belong to any of them. The station was empty. I bought a ticket to Boston with the money I'd saved from 3 years working at the campus library. I sat on a cold plastic bench in the waiting room. That's when my phone started buzzing. "Ryan, where are you? We're worried sick." "Son, come home. Don't make this worse. We can talk. If you don't reply right now, don't bother coming back." One message after another. Then came one from Derek. "You selfish little piece of crap. You just ruined my life. I won't forgive you." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I opened my phone settings, blocked every number. One by one, the screen asked, "Are you sure you want to block these contacts?" I pressed confirm. 5:02 a.m. Dallas was still asleep, but I was wide awake. And for the first time in my life, I was choosing my own way forward. That afternoon, I stood in front of the old house in Wellesley, the one Grandma Eleanor had lived in for over 40 years. My hand was shaking as I rang the doorbell, not from the cold, but from everything I was carrying inside. The door opened. She saw me, and her eyes lit up instantly, like she'd somehow known I was coming. "Ryan, oh my goodness, how did you even get here so fast? You look like you just escaped a hurricane." I didn't answer right away. She gently pulled me inside, her hand resting on my shoulder, right where the bruise still lingered from my father's grip the morning before. I sat down in her familiar armchair in the living room, sunlight filtering through the window, and then I told her everything. The request to hand over my scholarship to Derek, the plan for the perfect family performance at my birthday party, the plot to forge my signature and steal my documents while I slept. When I rolled up my sleeve and showed her the bruise, her face changed. Her eyes, normally soft, warm brown, turned sharp, like steel. She wasn't loud. She didn't scream, but there was a storm behind her silence. Without a word, she stood up, walked to the antique landline phone on the wooden cabinet, and started dialing, each button pressed like a knife. She put the call on speaker. It rang twice. Then my father picked up. "Hello, Mom? Oh, thank God you're calling. I don't know what happened to Ryan. He left this morning, left behind some scribbled note." Silence. Her voice wasn't raised, but it cut through his sentence like glass. "I'm sitting next to my grandson. He just showed me the bruise on his shoulder, and he told me everything you plan to do." Silence. Only the sound of rapid breathing from the other end. "I've been sending you money for 15 years because I believed you needed help. I looked the other way when you favored Derek. I even ignored how you funneled Ryan's college fund into that failed startup. But this? Mom, I didn't. You locked your own son in his room, threatened him, and teamed up with his brother to steal legally protected scholarship assets? And you still think you deserve to call yourself a father?" The silence stretched. Then Eleanor spoke, clear, calm, deliberate. "As of today, all financial support from me ends. I'll be meeting with my attorney to update my will. Derek receives nothing, and neither do you, Richard." "Mom, you can't." "I just did. Anything else you'd like to say?" All that came from the other end was breath, heavy, defeated. Then she hung up. The soft click of the receiver sounded like the end of 21 years of silence. She turned back to me. Her face had softened, but her eyes remained unwavering. "From now on, you'll live here until it's time to leave for school, and no one is ever going to lay a finger on you again." For the first time in my life, an adult stood up for me without me having to beg for it. And for the first time, I believed that not all families require blood, just enough courage to protect what's right. A week after that final phone call, Grandma Eleanor and I were trimming hedges in the yard when a familiar gray BMW slowly pulled up to the front gate. I froze, but she didn't. She placed the pruning shears gently on the grass, wiped her hands on her apron, and turned to me, her voice soft as a breeze. "Stay inside, Ryan. This isn't your battle anymore." She stepped onto the porch, small but unshakable, like the stone foundation of an old cathedral. I stood by the kitchen window, heart pounding, as I watched my parents get out of the car. My mother looked worn out, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a rush, her purse no longer designer. My father, once the image of success in crisp suits, now wore a wrinkled dress shirt and a belt that had clearly seen better days. They didn't come like parents. They came like beggars. I couldn't hear what they said, but I didn't need to. My mother bowed her head, hands clasped, her body language pleading. My father hunched over so low I thought he might kneel. But Eleanor stood firm, arms crossed, eyes unblinking. And after less than 5 minutes, she shook her head. Once. Decisive. My parents turned back toward the car, retreating like people who'd just had the last door slammed in their face. Mom covered her face. Dad didn't look back. They drove off, down the cobblestone road where, for the first time, I was living a life I had chosen for myself. That evening, I got a call from Aunt Jessica, my mom's sister, the only one who had ever whispered to me, "Being family doesn't mean staying silent." "Ryan, sweetie, I thought you should hear this from me. Derek, he's officially bankrupt. And not just that, he's being sued. He defaulted on multiple credit cards. His company's gone under." I stayed quiet, listening, like someone hearing about the fall of a character they barely knew. "Your mom's selling her old jewelry. Your dad, he's working night shifts at a grocery store. They're talking about putting the house up for sale." "And Derek?" I asked, not sure I wanted the answer. "He's back in his old room, gaming all day, drinking all night. No job, no search, just blame. And guess who they're blaming?" I gave a dry, tired laugh. I already knew. "They say if you'd just given him the money, none of this would have happened. They're calling you the one who ruined the family bloodline." But I didn't feel angry or sad or vindicated. I just felt light. Light like someone who escaped a burning house, on their own 2 feet, with a heart that no longer needs anyone's permission to live freely. One early September afternoon, I was reading on the porch swing at Grandma Eleanor's house when the doorbell rang. But it wasn't just a normal ring. 2 short chimes, then 3 more in quick succession, urgent, almost desperate. My heart skipped. I got up. It was my parents. They stood there like strangers dropped into someone else's summer. My mother wore a faded jacket, fraying at the cuffs. My father looked thinner, his eyes hollow, but one thing hadn't changed. That look, the one that said they still expected me to cave. "Ryan," Mom's voice cracked. "Can we talk? Just for a minute." I didn't invite them in. Instead, I stepped off the porch, down into the warm, golden light. "What is there left to talk about?" I asked, calmly, more calmly than I expected. Dad jumped in. "Son, we made mistakes, but every family stumbles. We're still your family, aren't we?" I looked him dead in the eye. The same man who once shoved me against a wall, called me a burden, and laughed when I said I wanted to study out of state. "No, we're not family. Family doesn't lock their kid in a room. Family doesn't use them as leverage for money." Mom started to cry. "Ryan, I know I failed you, but we really need help now. Derek, he's spiraling. He's thinking about ending it all." I closed my eyes. My heart flinched, because I'm still human. I don't hate him, but I can't save someone else when I nearly drowned trying to keep myself alive. Then came the words I wasn't expecting. Not tears, not rage, just emptiness. "I'm begging you, even just a little. Ryan, I gave birth to you." I took a deep breath, and for the first time in my life, I said this without trembling. And for the longest time, I thought that was unbreakable. But Mom, blood isn't a reason to keep suffering. Family should be a choice, not a demand. Dad clenched his bag strap, his face reddening. Mom choked on a sob. "So this is how you treat us? After everything?" I smiled, not mockingly, not bitterly, just peacefully. The kind of smile I didn't know I was capable of until that moment. "Not after everything." After realizing everything you called everything was never mine to begin with. I turned around, walked toward the door. No one stopped me. No one begged again. The door closed behind me. Not heavy, not painful, not hateful, just final. That last meeting, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg to be seen. I just needed them to walk out of my life, the way they had already done a long time ago. Only this time, I was the one who closed the door. The first day of classes at St. Augustine Business School happened on a crisp, sunlit fall morning. A gentle breeze danced through the trees, their leaves glowing amber and gold. In the distance, church bells chimed softly, like a soundtrack to the start of a brand new chapter. I stood in the center of campus wearing my old gray hoodie. Nothing fancy, nothing eye-catching, but a symbol of the journey I had walked on my own. On my back was a backpack filled with fresh notebooks, my enrollment documents, and one letter. The final one Grandma Eleanor wrote before I left home. "Walk in there like you belong, because you do. No comparisons, no permission needed." When I arrived at the dorm, she was already there. Grandma didn't say much. She just stood by the car, holding a small apple pie wrapped in brown paper, and looked at me with eyes warm as sunlight. "Ryan," she said, "you already walked the longest part of the road alone. Now it's time to learn how to receive." I hugged her. At first, just a normal hug, but when I wrapped my arms around her shoulders, something inside me cracked open. All the pressure I'd carried in my chest for years, the tension, the weight, the silence, it finally broke, and I cried. Not out of sadness, not out of regret, but because, for the first time, I felt safe. No judgment, no fear of betrayal, no need to prove myself just to be seen. Only acceptance, only love, without conditions. She didn't ask me why I cried. She just squeezed my hand gently, as if to say, "You made it, sweetheart. You finally arrived where you were always meant to be." That day, I stepped into my first lecture hall. First row, first class, First syllabus I once thought belonged to someone else's dream, but this time I wasn't just present, I belonged. You don't have to be born in the right place to deserve a real chance. You just have to be brave enough to walk forward, even when your own family turns their back. And if you're lucky, like I was, someone like Grandma Eleanor will be waiting at the end of the road, arms open wide. 1 year after starting college, I returned to Grandma Eleanor's house for Thanksgiving, not to escape anymore, but to come home. In every sense of the word, she was in the garden, planting daffodils in the corner bed when I arrived. I brought a few homemade dishes with me. Not exactly gourmet, but it was the first time I'd ever cooked with the feeling, I'm making this for someone I truly love. Over dinner, she asked me something I wasn't expecting. If you could go back in time and meet yourself at 16, the boy who once thought, maybe I don't matter, what would you say to him? I looked down at the table. Memories came rushing in. The forgotten birthday, the family meetings where I felt invisible, my father's harsh voice when I said I wanted to apply for scholarships. Then I looked up and answered, I'd say, you don't have to be perfect to be loved. You're not a broken version of someone else. You are you, and that is enough. She smiled. She didn't need to say anything more, because she was the first person who ever made me believe that was true. I don't know where you are in your journey. You, the one listening to this right now, maybe you're still trying to be seen. Maybe you're the middle child, the one always expected to sacrifice. Or maybe you've been treated as the family's backup plan. But let me tell you this, your worth doesn't come from how many times you've kept quiet. It doesn't come from how much you've helped someone destroy their own life again and again. Your worth lies in the fact that you got back up, that you chose to move forward, even when no one was walking beside you. And if you have someone like Grandma Eleanor, a best friend, a teacher, even a stranger who's willing to listen, hold on to them, because sometimes a hug at the right moment can save an entire soul from breaking. And if you don't have someone like that yet, be that person for yourself. My name is Ryan Carter. I used to be a shadow in my own family, but today I am me, and I don't need anyone's permission to live that truth.